Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to introduce you to the Caribbean-Canada Leaders Dialogue. And I'm going to try and get through it without getting the hook. But yeah, as I said earlier, my background is with the labor movement. I spent over 30 years as a representative of the Canadian Auto Workers Union and bargained collective agreements and settled strikes and probably caused a few strikes in my day. My involvement goes back to the Duke of Edinburgh Commonwealth Study Conference, goes back to 1979 when I was president of the Kitchener-Waterloo and District Labour Council. I was asked to join the conference as chair of a group, and I really didn't know what it was all about. But at that time, I did, in fact, agree to go on the conference in 1980 when I was still a young teenager, and there was 300 people gathered from around the Commonwealth, and they were divided up between business, labor, and government, and civil society. Those were the sectors that the Duke of Edinburgh thought it would be important to bring together, because there was a lot of strife in post-war UK at the time, because of course the war just ended, unemployment was low, but the unions had given up a lot of wage increases or potential wage increases to help the war effort, and there was this mood around to really force society to give back what they had lost, and so there was a lot of strife, and so the Duke decided he would try and put together a conference that would bring together the two important sectors in our society that really make the system work, and that was business and labor, and of course government, and civil society and academia was the other piece of it. So you had 40% labor, 40% business, and 20% other, which included government, civil society, and academia. And the first conference was certainly, it was an experiment, as many people called it at the time, but it was an opportunity for business folks and labor people to get together and talk to each other, some of whom have never ever talked to a labor person, or a labor person talked to a senior business person for their whole career, other than collective bargaining and yelling at each other. And I'll give you a little story about that later when I went down to Barbados in 2010. But and of course, you know, after the war, there was this strong element of anger and a bit of fascism in the UK, and so it was a trying time. And the conference came together in 1956 in Oxford, and that was the meeting place. So essentially what happens in these conferences is that the 300 people would be divided into 20 groups of 15. Each group would be assigned a certain area. They would go out and they would visit a workplace. They would talk to labor. They would talk to business, the managers, and they would meet with community officials. And the purpose of that was to give people an opportunity to understand what their problems were, how they were dealing with their particular problems in their workplace, and how they solved those problems, so that the lessons learned during these visits, field visits, would then help them perhaps solve problems back in their own workplace. And the conference lasted about 3 weeks, and so you can imagine 3 weeks of moving 300 people around. That was quite a task in those days. And of course we didn't have cell phones and all the other electrical gadgets that we have now to help keep track of everybody. And it was a huge, huge success. And the same happened to me when I participated in the 1980 conference. You know, we've had people from all over the world. I was the chair of my group. I had a couple people from Nigeria, a couple from Tanzania, and of course one guy from Bermuda. And you know, it was a marvelous opportunity to get to know people and build links. And so, as part of my history around the conference and my opportunity to give back to the conference, after the 1980 conference, a number of us got together and thought that it might be a good idea if we tried to do a similar conference in Canada, and that's what we did. In 1980, we got together and we put together the format for a Governor General's Conference, which had the first conference in 1983, and has continued ever since. I think the next one's in 2025. I'm not quite sure about that. But under the leadership of the Governor General. So as of today, we probably have about 5,000 or 6,000 alumni worldwide, and it's something that I think people should be quite proud of. I know I am. The original conference was in '56, and it went on a rotation of every 6 years, because that's the amount of time it took for people to get back into their workplaces and talk about whether or not they should have another one. And so after the successful conference in 1956, the Canadians thought, well, because it was such an exciting and interesting conference, that they would try to put one on in Canada. And so the Canadian group got together, and they met with the Duke and said, look, we'd like you to support a 1962 conference in Canada, which of course he did. And again, by all reports, it was a success. What they did in that particular conference, they got individuals, they boarded a train in Halifax, and they went across the country. And they visited and they talked to community leaders, and they got a real feel for what Canada was all about. And again, it was another successful conference. And then the conference, then the Australians decided that they would try and do it in 1968, which they did. And they were able to put together a conference, and the format was similar in each circumstance, and that's what we did with the Governor General's Conference as well. And so we get to our idea as a volunteer charity. We decided it would be important for us to reach out to another part of the world and do a regional conference, which we did in 2011. And again, we opened it in Canada, and we had groups go to different parts of our country, and then they would leave Canada and go to a Caribbean country under the same kind of circumstance. They would meet with business, labor, and government in that particular country, and then they would come back together and make a report to the Duke of Edinburgh, or under the Caribbean Conference, to Princess Anne, who took over the responsibilities after the Duke stepped back from his duties. And that's what we're doing in 2025. We are going to open up the conference in Toronto in May of next year. And of course, we have Wes Hall as our chair. He is a Jamaican entrepreneur. I think a lot of people in here would probably know him. And he's agreed to chair the conference in 2025. We will open in Toronto at the Weston Harbour Castle, and we're going to close in Barbados at the Hilton under the same format. We'll have probably about 100 to 110 people, depending on the amount of funds that we raise. And we will hopefully raise enough money. Our budget's going to be $1.2 million, of which we probably have $600,000 raised so far as of today. And we're still hoping to gather more money, of course, and I think we'll be able to get to the other side as we get closer to the launch of the conference. I don't see the hook coming out yet, but I wanted to tell you a little story about. I want to tell you a little story about the first time I went to Barbados when we were setting up the conference. I got a hold of some of our alumni from the 1980 conference and said, "Look, we're planning to do this Caribbean Canada Leadership Conference, and I'd like you to try and set up a meeting in Barbados." And so they agreed to do that. So they pulled together probably 7 or 8 alumni from all of the conferences that had taken place over the years, and so I flew down to Barbados to have the meeting. I got a call from Eddie Ball, who was from Bermuda. He tipped me off. He said, "Look, there may be some shooting at the meeting that you got tonight." And I said, "Okay, we'll have to deal with it." But anyway, when I got there, it was very kind and gentle to start out with. But before I knew it, I was called a colonialist, as you pointed out, Robert, and we got into a hell of an FU yelling match. And anyway, we settled it down, and the first Caribbean Canada Conference took place in 2011. And it was very successful and very, very warm and happy that we were able to pull it off. So, and we've done a few other conferences since that time. And each time the conference is getting stronger, and we believe that 2025 will probably be the best conference since. And it's going to be a shorter conference. Of course, the 56th conference was 3 weeks, and it's just impossible to pull key people away from their workplace for a period of 3 weeks nowadays. Plus, it's expensive. And the cost of travel, the cost of accommodations, all of the costs for the conference are borne by the conference. So this becomes a very expensive venture, especially if you extend it a day or expand it in the amount of people that you have attend. So we are hoping to gather about 100 or 120 people, of which 30 will be from Canada and probably 70 or so will be from the Caribbean. And we will be visiting 7 countries in the Caribbean, although we will be drawing individuals from all of the Caribbean. And the countries we will be visiting is Bahamas, Barbados, Bermuda, Dominica, Grenada, Guyana, and Jamaica. And of course, we'd like to expand that if we could, but we're limited on the amount of money that we have. And so that kind of gives you an overview of what we're doing. We will be putting up our website in the next, probably in the next month or so, a detailed website on how people can apply to participate in the conference. So if you have anyone that's what I call a keener, someone who is interested to become a candidate to participate in the conference, I would ask you to direct them to our website, which we will give to Robert so he can put that on the CCI website so people have an opportunity to apply. As I said earlier, it's a volunteer charity. We're a charity of alumni and professionals, and we're hoping that we can make this a success, and we know with the support that we have in this room and elsewhere that it will be a success. Thank you very much for your attention. I appreciate the invitation. Thank you.